Behind towering iron gates, a mansion stood as a beacon of success, surrounded by perfectly manicured lawns and silent, elegant fountains. Inside, the scene was one of flawless opulence. Marble floors gleamed under golden lights. Priceless paintings adorned the walls. And the furniture was worth more than most people's homes. This was the domain of a powerful millionaire, a man known for his influence, his success, and his seemingly endless wealth. To the outside world, he had it all: a beautiful home, societal respect, and now a newborn child to complete the perfect picture. But within those opulent walls, peace was a missing guest. In the grandest bedroom of the mansion, a tiny infant lay on a vast soft bed, swaddled in silk. The baby wanted for nothing. Designer clothes, imported toys, and the finest medical care money could buy were all readily available. And yet, the baby would not stop crying. The cries were sharp, piercing, and filled with a pain that echoed through the long, silent halls of the house, setting everyone on edge. The millionaire stood by the bed, his face etched with exhaustion and frustration. He had conquered boardrooms and vanquished powerful rivals, but nothing had prepared him for this moment of utter helplessness. No matter what he tried, the baby's cries continued, a constant, high-pitched wail. The mother sat nearby, her eyes red from sleepless nights, holding back tears as she watched her child suffer. Her heart was filled with love, but her mind was consumed by fear. The best doctors had been summoned, and nurses checked the baby again and again. They ran tests for illness, pain, hunger, and any imaginable discomfort. Every time, the results were the same. The baby was perfectly healthy, strong, and well-fed. Still, the crying never stopped. Expensive medicines were flown in, special formulas were prepared, and the advice of experts was followed to the letter. Nothing worked. As the hours bled into one another, the tension in the mansion thickened. Servants tiptoed around, afraid to make the slightest noise. The relentless sound of the infant's distress frayed everyone's nerves. The millionaire felt a hot surge of anger, not at his child, but at his own powerlessness. He could acquire companies, land, and loyalty, but he couldn't buy a moment of silence or peace for his own baby. The beautifully decorated room, meant to be a sanctuary, now felt like a prison of stress. The soft lights seemed harsh, the expensive art meaningless. His phone buzzed incessantly with urgent business calls, but he ignored them. For the first time in his life, money was irrelevant. All that mattered was the inconsolable child on the bed. Outside the room, the staff whispered in hushed tones. Some speculated the baby could sense the fear in the room. Others thought the child needed something no doctor could prescribe. But no one dared to voice their thoughts aloud. In this house, only wealth and authority had a voice. The millionaire walked to the window, gazing out at the sprawling city lights below. He thought of the thousands of people out there, each with their own struggles. He had always equated success with control, but now, standing there, he felt utterly insignificant. The crying continued behind him, a relentless reminder that even the richest man on earth could be brought to his knees. The mother gently touched her baby's hand, whispering soft words, humming quiet lullabies, and offering silent prayers. But still, the infant cried. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she wondered what she was doing wrong. She had dreamed of motherhood as a joyful journey, but this reality was painful and confusing. Time crawled by. Exhaustion settled over the room like a heavy shroud. The air was thick with worry. The crying never paused, not even for a breath. The millionaire finally sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. His legendary confidence was gone, replaced by a primal fear. What if this never stopped? What if something was deeply, fundamentally wrong? Unnoticed by the frantic parents and the baffled experts, a quiet figure stood near the doorway. She was a poor black maid who had worked in the house for years, now holding a cleaning cloth in her hands. Her clothes were simple, her presence often overlooked. She had seen much in her life: pain, loss, struggle, and the realities of motherhood. Her gaze rested on the crying infant, not with frustration, but with a deep, knowing concern. While the wealthy and powerful argued and the experts admitted defeat, the maid simply observed, sensing something that everyone else had missed. The room was filled with the sound of crying, but it was also filled with the silence of unanswered questions. In that moment, the grand mansion revealed its true nature, a place full of riches, but completely empty of peace. And unknowingly, they all stood on the precipice of a moment that was about to change everything. Thanks for watching. In the grand mansion, she was just a shadow, the maid standing by the doorway, invisible amidst the quiet hustle of staff. No one ever asked her opinion, and no one expected her to have one. In this house, people like her were meant to clean, to serve, and to stay utterly silent. But her eyes, they never left the crying infant on the bed. Life had taught her long ago how to observe without being noticed, to listen more than she spoke. Her own past was a tapestry of hard days, small rooms, and sleepless nights. She remembered holding her own children when there was no money for doctors, no soft beds, and certainly no luxury. All she had then was patience, warmth, and a mother's instinct. As the baby's cries filled the room, the maid saw details others missed. The way the infant's tiny hands clenched, the subtle shifts in the tone of the cries, the tension in that little body. To the doctors, it was a medical puzzle. To the wealthy parents, it was a source of fear and frustration. But to the maid, it felt familiar, like a language she had spoken fluently many years ago. The room was heavy with worry. The millionaire father paced, barking orders into his phone. The mother sat nearby, her face a mask of drained hopelessness. Nurses whispered technical terms that offered no comfort, their knowledge as useless as the family's immense wealth. Money, for all its power, was failing them. The maid lowered her eyes as a nurse brushed past her. She knew her place here, or at least the place everyone believed she belonged. But something inside her, a voice shaped by experience, loss, and profound love, refused to be silenced. She remembered nights when her own baby cried endlessly. Neighbors complained, exhaustion burned through her, and fear was a constant companion. But she had learned that a baby's cry isn't always about sickness. Sometimes it's about fear or loneliness or a need that runs deeper than hunger. The infant's cry pierced the air again, louder this time. The sound was like a blade, sharp and desperate. The mother muffled a sob with her hand. The millionaire clenched his fists, helpless and angry. The maid took a small, hesitant step forward, then stopped. Fear held her back. In her world, speaking out of turn could cost you your livelihood. She stared at the floor, then back at the baby, her heart pounding. She noticed how the baby stiffened when laid flat, how the cries softened just for a moment when someone briefly picked him up. But no one held him long enough. Everyone was too busy, too frantic, rushing to try the next expensive, ineffective solution. Breathing in slowly, she tried to steady herself. She thought of her own children, of the simple warmth of skin to skin. The rhythmic sound of a heartbeat, the profound comfort of just being held close. She wondered if this baby, surrounded by so many, felt completely and utterly alone. Time stretched on, and the tension in the room grew thicker. Another doctor quietly shook his head, admitting there was nothing more to test. The words hung in the air, a final, crushing blow. For the first time in his life, the millionaire looked defeated. In that moment of shared despair, the maid realized something crucial. Waiting would change nothing. Her silence would not help this child. Her hands trembled slightly as she stepped forward again. This time, she didn't stop. She cleared her throat softly, the sound so quiet it surprised even herself. A few heads turned, their faces filled with confusion. Who was this? The maid stood still, her eyes lowered but her posture steady. She didn't speak yet. She simply looked at the baby, then at the exhausted parents. Inside her, fear and courage waged a silent war. She knew that once she spoke, there was no going back. The crying continued, a raw, pleading sound that filled the space between them. The baby's voice seemed to be begging for something that had no name, something no amount of money could buy. The maid finally lifted her head, her eyes calm and focused. Years of being invisible had taught her patience. Years of motherhood had taught her truth. In that instant, she was no longer just a maid. She was a woman who understood the language of a crying child. The room waited, completely unaware that in the silence of the powerless, a quiet confidence was about to change everything. The room felt frozen as the maid finally spoke. Her voice was soft but steady, carrying years of experience hidden behind silence. She didn't raise her tone or demand attention. She simply asked if she could try something. At first, no one responded. The millionaire looked at her with surprise, almost disbelief. In this house, suggestions came from experts in white coats, not from someone holding a cleaning cloth. The nurses exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to laugh or interrupt. The baby cried again, louder than before, breaking the awkward pause. That sound pushed the moment forward. The mother lifted her tired eyes and looked at the maid. There was no judgment in her face, only exhaustion mixed with a flicker of hope. She nodded slowly, not because she fully believed, but because she had nothing left to lose. The millionaire hesitated, pride holding him back, then gave a short nod. Desperation spoke louder than status. The maid stepped closer to the bed, her movements careful and respectful. She washed her hands quietly, as she had done countless times before. Her heart raced, knowing all eyes were now on her, but she did not rush. She gently lifted the infant from the bed, supporting the tiny head and fragile body. The baby cried harder for a moment, startled by the change, the sound echoing sharply. The maid held the infant close to her chest, placing the baby against the warmth of her body. She began to sway slowly, back and forth, not fast, not slow, just steady. Her breathing became calm and deep. She hummed softly, a tune passed down through generations, a sound without words but full of comfort. The song was simple, almost forgotten by time, carrying memories of long nights and tired arms. At first, nothing changed. The baby continued to cry. The millionaire felt irritation rise again, thinking this was all a mistake. The nurses stood stiff, waiting for the crying to worsen. Then, something small happened. The baby's cries softened slightly. The sharp edges of panic faded into shorter sounds. The tiny body relaxed just a little. The maid adjusted her hold, keeping the baby close, letting the infant feel the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. She continued to sway and hum, unbothered by the stares around her. Seconds passed, then minutes. The crying slowed, turning into quiet sobs. The room grew silent, except for the soft hum. People held their breath, afraid to break the moment. And then the baby finally stopped crying. A deep quiet settled over the room, heavier than the noise had been. The infant rested calmly against the maid, eyes slowly closing. The mother gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth. Tears fell freely now, not from fear, but from relief. The millionaire stared, unable to understand what he was seeing. The nurses stepped closer, checking the baby carefully. The infant's breathing was steady, the body relaxed. There was no medical explanation, only a human one. The maid continued to hold the baby, not smiling, not celebrating. She treated the moment with respect, as if it were sacred. She slowly placed the infant back onto the bed, keeping one hand gently on the baby's chest. The baby remained calm, peaceful, as if the crying had never existed. The room felt different, now lighter, warmer. The millionaire cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. T felt something unfamiliar: humility. For the first time, he understood that money had not solved this problem. The mother stood and walked toward the maid. Her voice trembled as she whispered her thanks. She reached out and touched the maid's hand, a simple gesture that carried deep meaning. The maid nodded quietly, stepping back, returning to the place she had always stood. Yet the room could not return to how it was before. Something had changed. The staff looked at her differently now, not as invisible help, but as someone who had brought peace where power failed. The crying baby had revealed a truth no one expected, that comfort does not come from luxury alone, and that sometimes the most profound solution is simply human closeness. And in that silent room, the line between rich and poor blurred, leaving only one clear truth. The answer they searched for had been standing quietly beside them all along. The silence in the room was a strange and unfamiliar thing. After hours of endless crying, the sudden calm felt almost unreal. The baby lay peacefully on the bed, breathing softly, as if the painful ordeal had never happened. The millionaire stood frozen, unsure of what to say or do. His entire world was built on clear, predictable rules. Money solved problems. Authority commanded respect, and people listened when he spoke. But this moment, this quiet victory, followed none of those rules. He looked at the maid again, but this time he truly saw her. Not as part of the background, not as hired help, but as a person. She stood quietly near the wall, hands folded, eyes lowered, as if she expected nothing to change. The baby's mother stayed close to the bed, her eyes tracing every small movement. The fear that had gripped her for days slowly melted away, replaced by a profound sense of relief. She reached out and gently touched the baby's blanket, her heart feeling lighter than it had in a very long time. Around them, the staff whispered among themselves. The doctors spoke in hushed tones, trying to make sense of what had just happened. All their training, all their expensive equipment, had been useless against a simple human touch. Some felt humbled, others were simply confused. Finally, the millionaire's voice cut through the quiet. It was calmer now, slower than before. He thanked the doctors and nurses, dismissing them for the night. One by one, they filed out of the room, still shaking their heads in disbelief. Soon, only the parents, the baby, and the maid remained. The large, opulent room suddenly felt smaller, more intimate, more human. The millionaire walked towards the maid, each step careful, as if he were approaching something fragile. He stopped a short distance from her, struggling to find the right words. Pride was a stubborn companion, but it was quieter now. He thanked her, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Gratitude wasn't a language he spoke often. The maid simply nodded, accepting his thanks without a hint of triumph. She didn't boast or explain her methods. To her, she had only done what felt right, what any caring person would have done. In a gesture that carried more weight than he realized, the millionaire offered her a chair. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly sat down. In that instant, the invisible hierarchy of the room shifted. The mother joined them, her voice soft but sincere. She asked the maid about her life, her own children, and where she had learned such incredible patience. The maid answered simply, sharing pieces of a life shaped by struggle, but also by immense love. As she spoke, the millionaire listened, truly listened for the first time. He heard a story untouched by wealth, a story of long days, tired arms, and a quiet strength built through hardship. An uncomfortable realization dawned on him. The wisdom he had always sought and respected had come wrapped in expensive degrees and prestigious titles. He had completely overlooked the quiet, profound knowledge standing beside him every single day. The baby stirred, then settled back into a peaceful sleep. The maid watched with a calm smile, confident that the child now felt safe and loved. In a decision that surprised even himself, the millionaire told the maid she was welcome to stay closer to the family. not as a servant watching from the shadows, but as a trusted, respected, and valued member of their lives. A flicker of emotion shone in the maid's eyes as she thanked him. She had never asked for recognition, only for fairness. That night, the mansion felt different. The walls no longer echoed with inconsolable cries. The air itself felt warmer, less heavy. Peace had entered the home, not with a grand announcement, but with a quiet, human touch. In the days that followed, the story of that night lingered with the family. The millionaire began to question his old beliefs. He started to see people more clearly, listen more intently, and judge far less. The maid continued her work, but she was no longer invisible. The rest of the staff treated her with a newfound respect. Small changes rippled through the house, like light finding its way into dark corners. The baby grew stronger and calmer, thriving not on luxury alone, but on genuine warmth and connection. The mansion remained just as grand, the family just as wealthy. But something far more valuable had been added to their lives: understanding, humility, and humanity. The cries of a tiny infant had revealed a truth far greater than any amount of money could buy. Peace cannot be bought. It can only be given. And in a house once defined by riches, it was a simple, selfless act that created the deepest and most meaningful wealth of all. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more.